Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really massive shift in the landscape of artificial intelligence. By July of 2026, Anthropic didn't just iterate on their AI models, they actually pulled off a total transformation. We're talking about shifting from a pure software company into a fully vertically integrated powerhouse. Now, if you follow the AI space, you already know how incredibly difficult and capital-intensive it is to control the entire stack, from the foundational silicon all the way up to the end-user applications. But Anthropic has managed to put together the strategic blueprint that really sets them apart from their most aggressive competitors, and it's fundamentally changing how we think about scale, safety, and corporate AI deployment. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to break this down layer by layer. We'll start with the strategic rise of the company, then move into their hardware and compute independence, the dual model strategy, enterprise focus and pricing, and finally, what their IPO means for the future.
Part 1, the strategic rise of Anthropic. So for the last few years, the AI narrative has really been dominated by this whole move fast and break things mentality, right? But Anthropic deliberately positioned itself as the highly disciplined, safe player in the room. But honestly, don't mistake safe for slow, because their ambitions have scaled at a breathtaking pace. To put that into perspective, just think about this number, roughly $965 billion. Following a massive funding round, that is the valuation figure attached to their confidential IPO filing. We are literally looking at a nearly trillion-dollar entity here. At this valuation, the stakes are extreme. You don't hit a number like this by just building a slightly better conversational bot. You hit it by fundamentally rewiring the infrastructure of the digital economy. To justify that massive valuation, they had to shift entirely away from being a mere software provider. They realized pretty quickly that relying on external hardware and compute bottlenecks was a huge existential risk. So they went all in on full vertical integration, taking complete control over their compute, custom hardware, and models. They've really cornered the market as the precise, reliable business-to-business alternative. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a completely controlled, safety-first ecosystem anchored in their core philosophy of constitutional AI. Moving on to Section 2, Hardware and Compute Independence. This is where Anthropic starts escaping those traditional supply chain constraints that have bottlenecked so many other AI labs. They built a three-pillar infrastructure strategy to do this. First up, on the hardware side, to stop relying so heavily on NVIDIA GPUs and boost their margins, they entered early talks with Samsung Foundry for custom AI chips, potentially on a cutting-edge 2-nanometer process. Second, to lead this hardware push, they made a brilliant hiring move, bringing on Clive Chan, a top-tier hardware engineer with experience from OpenAI and Tesla's Dojo project. And third, they went out and secured the gigawatt-scale compute power they'd need to actually deploy these systems globally. And when we talk about scale, we have to talk about the Colossus One deal from May 2026. Anthropic secured a massive compute partnership with SpaceX and xAI. They basically took over the entire capacity of Colossus One, which is one of the largest and fastest deployed supercomputers in the world. We're talking over 220,000 NVIDIA GPUs drawing more than 300 megawatts of power. That gave them the raw, immediate capacity they needed to drastically boost their Claude Pro and Claude Max offerings for their enterprise clients. Now, what's really interesting here is that their footprint on Earth just isn't enough. According to the source material, they are planning a future collaboration for orbital, gigawatt-scale compute. Yes, space-based compute. I know it sounds like pure science fiction, but it's actually an incredibly pragmatic response to the very real limits of our terrestrial power grids, land availability, and cooling capabilities. They aren't just scaling, they're fundamentally rethinking where the physical hardware of AI can even exist. Which brings us to Section 3, the dual model strategy. In June of 2026, Anthropic introduced this huge technological breakthrough by intelligently segmenting their models based on risk and capability. They rolled out 2 distinct variations built on the same base architecture. On one side, you've got Claude Fable 5. This is their broad, heavily safeguarded model optimized for long autonomous tasks. Think complex software engineering or visual reasoning that can run safely for days. On the flip side, you have Claude Mythos 5. This one is highly specialized, where standard safeguards have been intentionally dialed back in key areas to unlock maximum capability. But Mythos 5 is absolutely not for the general public. It's strictly for trusted, highly specialized users. And that trusted user base includes the US government, through a program called Project Glasswing. This provides restricted access to Claude Mythos 5, allowing top-tier operators to use its unparalleled capabilities for advanced cybersecurity and biomedical defense. But here is the genius part about their safety approach.
Anthropic designed the system so that any highly critical requests made on Mythos 5 are automatically routed right back to their older, super stable Claude Opus 4.8 model for a safety check. It's just an incredibly elegant way to balance pushing the absolute limits of capability while rigidly managing the risks.
Section 4, Enterprise Focus and Pricing. So the crucial point is, how exactly does Anthropic monetize this? Well, the answer lies in their unyielding focus on the B2B sector. Their token pricing, around $10 per million for input and $50 for output, is fairly standard for frontier models. But the real game changer is their stance on data privacy. They retain traffic data for a maximum of 30 days, and that is strictly for detecting attacks or jailbreaks. Plus, they guarantee zero enterprise data will ever be used to train their future models. For highly regulated industries, those hard business realities are exactly what closes the deal.
What you should really take away from this is how masterfully Anthropic has rebranded what an AI actually is. They have pivoted hard away from the standard chatbot label. Instead, they're positioning Fable and Mythos as high-end, autonomous scientific tools. But hyper-focusing on cybersecurity, biomedicine, and critical infrastructure, they've unlocked a high-margin B2B monetization strategy that totally bypasses the fickle consumer market. They are selling mission-critical enterprise software here, not consumer toys.
And finally, Section 5, the IPO and future.
All of these layers we just talked about, the custom silicon, the massive compute, the dual models, the enterprise pricing, they've all been building toward this incredibly robust corporate structure as they head toward the public market. Just look at the ecosystem resilience anchoring them. You've got Samsung providing the hardware base, Anthropic engineering the models in the center, and SpaceX and xAI supplying the massive compute, all seamlessly distributed through Amazon and Google's cloud networks. They aren't trying to stubbornly build the single biggest model in total isolation. They're leveraging the world's top tech giants to ensure they are the most precise, safe, and enterprise-ready lab in existence. However, we've got to look at the whole picture, right? There are definitely strategic risks ahead. This web of partnerships creates a really heavy dependency. If there's a supply chain issue with Samsung or a compute delay with Colossus, Anthropic is going to feel that pain directly. Furthermore, because their entire brand identity is wrapped up in being the safe and responsible frontier lab, they are facing intensely heavy regulatory scrutiny over those very safety claims. Any failure in their constitutional AI safeguards could be completely devastating to their core enterprise business.
Which leaves us with this final, pivotal question to consider as Anthropic approaches its trillion-dollar public debut. In the race for AI supremacy, will trust and safety ultimately outvalue raw capability? Anthropic has bet their entire existence, from their 2-nanometer chips to their orbital compute plans, on the answer being yes. It's a truly fascinating strategy, and one that is absolutely going to define the next decade of technology. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the technology that's building our future.